Thank you so much, Rick. It is great to be here and to see a lot of familiar faces and new faces I look forward to getting to know. So first of all, tell me, is the mic at the right distance? Can you hear me all the way to the back? Okay, all right, great. Well, as Rick mentioned, first of all, it was terrific to have Misty and Rick and several other Panhandle writers at our first ever Paragraph Ranch Writers Retreat in our new hometown of Spur. How many of you have ever been to Spur? Know where Spur is? You may know of its reputation as the tiny house capital of America. Now, when people ask me, when we moved from Lubbock, do you live in a tiny house? Have you ever been to my house in Lubbock? I'm a book collector. So no, tiny house living was not the reason for moving our enterprise to Spur, but doing some interesting new things with our writing life and our teaching lives was the reason for it. It's a little bit of an art imitates life, imitates art all over again scenario. If you know anything about our Paragraph Ranch series of novels, which is where the enterprise name comes from, the series is about an East Coast writer who comes back to Texas to take care of an aging family member, and along the way learns some surprising lessons about the group of hometown writers she connects with. There's humor, we hope. There's romance, we hope. And if you don't know the books, I can make those available to you at half price today. So our Paragraph Ranch LLC consists of 3 partners with long-time experience in the media business. Kay Ellington, my co-author on the Paragraph Ranch series, and the native Texan of the two, so the inspiration for the storyline, has been in newspapers for her entire career, since starting out as the first female sports writer for the Snyder Daily News, and going on to work with Gannett, the New York Times regional group, Hearst, and then most recently, before moving to Spur, the Lubbock Avalanche Journal. We determined, chapter 2 in our careers, that small town newspapers are where the future is, and we acquired the Texas Spur weekly newspaper. Kay's now the publisher, and our editors, the other partner in our media group, Michelle Newby Lancaster, whose reviews appear in the National Book Critics Circle and every week at LoneStarLiteraryLife.com. How many of you follow or read the Lone Star Literary? I can tell you how to subscribe if you don't, and I can tell you why to subscribe if you don't. If you're a writer or an aspiring writer in Texas, wouldn't it be great to have an outlet that's like a Publisher's Weekly just for you, just for Texas readers, Texas authors, and the readers who most want to discover their works? So I'll talk a little bit about some of the marketing opportunities through Lone Star Literary, but it's mostly a great news, information, events, and educational site for you. And there's a little bit of bittersweet news about Lone Star Literary Life. After our team launched that publication in 2015, it has a new publisher as of January 1st. Our colleague Christine Hall, who's our blog tour coordinator, is the new publisher, and she's going to be rolling out some great new opportunities for you. But you can find that at LoneStarLiteraryLife.com. So the third wheel, in the third leg of our 3-legged stool, my background is in the history of books and authorship. That's my scholarly field. But I was also fortunate to work for many years with university presses and small presses from South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, and then here to Texas. Promoting books and helping authors make better books is my passion, but I feel really fortunate as someone who's just been a part-time poet and a part-time songwriter and a part-time researcher to claim half credit in a novel series that has gotten some pretty high praise and that is now about to roll out its third book. So that's a little bit of background that will kind of situate why it is that today you're going to get maybe a lot of old school smarts, because I've been in the book business for a long time, and a little bit of new media savvy. And it won't just all be one way. We'll help teach each other. We'll pack in as much as we can to these 2 45-minute sessions this morning. First thing I want to start with is to ask for a helper who can pass out some handouts. I didn't arrange that with you in advance. So, Linda, if you don't mind helping, there are 2 documents on the table, just those 2. And one of them has 1 sheet front and back, and the other has 2 sheets front and back. And if y'all can make sure that everyone gets a copy of those, this is a tool that we'll do a little work on as we go. So I want to start by asking you, writers, and boy, I feel so honored to be here with the High Plains Writers, former Panhandle professional writers, and the second oldest writers group. It's a real honor. How many of you are currently published authors? How many of you are working on a work in progress, whether you already have one or have another one? Excellent. How many of you are either published by an independent or major publisher or wish to be? How many of you have that as a goal, or how many of you are following the self-publishing path to publishing? And maybe like me, you could raise both hands. A lot of what I want to say about book marketing depends on whether you're in it for the cash or the cachet. It used to be, back when I started in publishing and marketing books. Yeah, it's a little confusing. There's a 3-page checklist and there's a 1-page.
Oh, it's 3 pages.
2 pages.
Front page.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's front back.
We'll let y'all work that out. I know it's going to be confusing. I don't mind if you talk. So it used to be that the only really respected path to publishing was the one that we think of today as traditional publishing or legacy publishing. That was, you get an agent, your agent gets you an editor, your editor gets you the book publishing deal, your publisher markets and sells your books, and you just sit back and take all the glory and reap the royalties. How's that working out for most of you in the room? Now, I know we have some rock stars among us. I know that that's true. But most of us in the 2000s, late 1990s, 2000s, when print-on-demand technology enabled a whole new model in book publishing, most of us writers and authors saw a much faster, maybe much more rewarding path to publishing that allowed us much more control over our creative product. So we started to explore the self-publishing option. Indie publishers got on the bandwagon because it also enabled small presses to publish smaller print runs without having to go broke doing it. So today, 2019, these paths have matured to be viable options with little stigma attached, in one way or the other, but a lot of lessons that have to be mastered as we rethink all this. So I'm here to talk about book marketing, but let's unpack that word because it really, in my experience, boils down to a number of discrete activities that you can do to help generate awareness and sales for your book. Cash and cachet. Marketing is the umbrella word we tend to use for how we get there. Marketing used to be the purview of large departments in publishers like the New York Big Five publishers, or like global conglomerates, or like small university presses that I work for, like Texas Tech University Press. But when authors are tasked with doing so many of these things, or taking responsibility for the success of so many marketing activities, we need to know a little bit more about what those really are. So I have found it handy over the years to categorize these things as I help educate authors. And I've broken these myriad activities, tasks, strategies into 5 categories that I think are easy to keep in your head. If you just remember, these are your road maps. Now, in my day job, I work for the Texas Historical Commission in heritage tourism. I do a lot of travel. I talk to a lot of travelers. And I remind them, hey, GPS is great. If you already know exactly where you're going, it's going to take you there. But if you're not exactly sure where you're going, you'd better have a roadmap. So these are your roadmaps. Marketing activities we'll talk about today, advertising, publicity, promotion, and sales. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? So that first one, marketing. Any of you who come from an MBA background or BBA background, where you learned the 4 Ps of marketing, Natalie, what kind of diagrams did you used to see? What were we taught were the 4 Ps?
I think they were measurable results way back in the day. You could do a promotion or have a plan, and then you could measure. Where today, it's like
that's a good point. Natalie points out that back in the day, marketing research could be used maybe more reliably and more expensively to figure out your results. You've got some tools like that at your disposal too. But we were often taught about product, place or placement or position in the market of your product, your price, and your promotion. And then there are 18 different flavors of this 4 Ps or 7 Ps or whatever. But I like to think in the book business, particularly, that we have to be mindful of positioning of our product. What does positioning mean? Somebody put a book spin on that for us.
Putting it front and center.
Okay, positioning your book front and center with the best visibility in the market. What else?
Identifying a target market.
Identifying a target market. Here, we have an answer in the back.
This is the same thing. Not just putting your book front and center, but putting it front and center in front of people who would be interested in what you write.
Yes, we might call that figuring out the target market. We might call that finding the niche for your particular book, and then maybe looking to be tops in your niche. Packaging in the book business. What's our packaging? How many of you judge a book by its cover? So we felt very fortunate in our Paragraph Ranch series to have the talents at our disposal of a top-notch Seattle designer, an experienced book designer, not an artist who just happened to say, yeah, I can design that cover for you, and not somebody like me who has a few basic skills in graphic design but doesn't really know her way around a book cover. So professional packaging of your book is an essential part of positioning it to appeal to that target market. Pricing. How did you decide the price point of your book? Any of you who already have a book on the market, how was the price of your book determined?
I compared it to other similar books.
All right, somebody says comparing it to similar books. It's just like real estate, isn't it? You look at the comparables. Linda, your books, you don't decide on the price, your publisher decides that. You probably don't have very much input, but you're probably glad to have their expertise. At Texas Tech University Press, I was responsible for looking at the manuscript that had been that was coming in under contract a couple of years before we even imagined putting it in a season catalog, and doing the initial research to see what other titles were like it on the market, how various strategies we could use to figure out books that had the same category identifiers, authors who had blurbed similar books, authors who had written similar books. We looked them up in book databases. Now that we have so much information available from Amazon and digital stores like that, we can use that for our research. And I'm going to mention a couple of particular ways that you can use to research the pricing of your book. And then how we can carry out getting people to purchase our book. So those are the things we're going to talk about in this section. We're going to spend a good bit of time on this because this is kind of the old school stuff I'm talking about. These are the things that I see authors who are so eager to get their new book to market overlook. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time on these. We'll probably do 2 of the topics, and then have our break and then do 3 of the topics. So take a look at this checklist for just a minute. I don't know if you can see all the details in the back. It really doesn't matter. This is something that is similar to the marketing checklist you have in front of you. It's a 3-page checklist. Take a glance at it. You'll see that I've organized this tool under those rubrics of marketing, advertising, etc. And I provide this to authors as a roadmap, as a way to get them started. It doesn't necessarily have every possible stop along the way. The idea is to get you thinking in those categories, to focus on not just, oh my gosh, can I afford to do a book bub? Have I gotten my business cards? Is my website up to date? Should I do a blog? Think strategically about how these categories relate to your particular book's goals, the best ways to reach your audience, and the best ways to use your talents. Maybe you're not a blogger. How many of you in here blog about your book, blog about anything? A good number of bloggers. I am not a blogger. I write too long and I take too much time. So here's an example. Here's an example from our second book, A Wedding at the Paragraph Wrench, and a start of the launch and rollout in events activities that we started to plan for this. Much of this was brainstorming. There are things that didn't come to pass on here. We put some particular things like we did launch our book at the Permian Basin Writers Workshop, and we were extremely fortunate that the timing of our book, our publisher was able to deliver our books in time for us to launch it at the very best event where it could possibly launch, because there's a scene in the book that talks about this event, the West Texas Book Festival in Abilene. That happened. We had some other signings. We had pitched our book to the Texas Book Festival that year and didn't get in, so we had to go back to Plan B and just, exhibit and network at the Texas Book Festival. But use this as your wish list. Think of anything. Categorize your thinking in ways that relate to your specific book project. Now, how might you know? How much might you know to even start that process of describing your book for the market and knowing how to fit it in with how to find the category where it best fits? Well, your book, it's your baby, and it has some vital statistics from the time that it's in gestation. It has some information that's going to be essential for it to grow up properly and to discover its best talents in the market. So the Social Security number of your book, anybody know right off what that's? What's that? ISBN. You are a much smarter audience when I would talk about ISBNs 20 years ago, people's eyes would glaze over and they, just said, why do I need that? But as the ISBN has become the data currency of Amazon.com and all other online and brick and mortar booksellers, your book doesn't get discovered without an ISBN. You probably all know that by now. If you've ever worked with Ingram Spark or Create Space, you know that those tools walk you through the process, and they won't leave you hanging without doing that. What you may not be aware of is how often you should use that identifier to make it easy for people to find your book on a number of sources. I venture that all of your books are available on Amazon.com. I venture that some of them are available on BN.com. I venture that a few of them are available on IndieBound.com. And then most of them are available in some e-reader format, Kindle, Kobo, Nook, iBooks. I venture that a few of them may even be available in audiobook format. Do you have any published audiobooks here?
Well, it's being made right now.
Excellent, way to go. Audiobooks is the fastest growing segment of book readers today. If you have a novel that lends itself to audiobook reading, you have a nonfiction book that lends itself to audiobook reading, figure out what he's doing. Talk to this guy right here. Rick?
How much does that cost?
How much does audiobook production cost?
Pay someone to read it.
Let's save that question for the very end, because some answers may emerge from some of these who have done it. Not as much as it used to is maybe my overall answer. So we were very fortunate 2 years ago to have the Paragraph Ranch series picked up by Lone Star Audiobooks. You can't imagine how thrilled we were to know that that would be the entree for this novel series into every public library in Texas that uses audiobook technology. So the point being, every one of these has a separate ISBN. And if you want people to discover the other editions of your book, the Paragraph Ranch books are available in a hardcover library binding, in a paperback, in Kindle and other digital formats, and an audiobook. Each of those has a unique ISBN. Now, how do numbers make your book discoverable and profitable? I won't spend much time on this, but I picked this up from another presentation. I'm going to move on to the next slide in just a second. ISBN, the elements that are going to go on your booking cover, I will talk a little bit about that. BISAC codes, the edition, the printing, and the Library of Congress bibliographical data, and all the numbers related to your prices and your sales and rankings. So you have to deal with numbers in the book business these days. Let's look a little at, just out of curiosity, what makes up that barcode. The EAN, that tells scanners that's a book. That's not a puzzle game or toy. That's not a coffee maker. That's book, and it exists in a place called Bookland. It's a fictional world called Bookland. Isn't that great? The next digit tells you the group, usually the country in which your book is published. The next set of numbers identify your publisher to the barcode scanner. The next group of numbers is your particular book's title with that publisher. And this little funny number at the end is a mathematical check digit that tells the barcode reader that the number is right, that humans wrote that ISBN correctly. Where do you find the price? Let's see. ISBN is repeated for human readers, and then the price, if you put the price on the book, goes in that second barcode. This doesn't mean that your book is $900. It just means that you didn't put the price on the book. Generally a smart strategy. So it is okay to leave the price off of your book if you're going to have some price elasticity with your book over the life of your book. If you're going to find that, hey, you can always just discount the retail price. That's exactly what Amazon does. You're going to see your suggested retail price, but Amazon's going to sell it where it decides to. But if you are selling a lot of books yourself directly to your readers, and you want to change the price over time, there's that. Just leave it blank. The physical element of your book and its cover. This is one of the most old school marketing bits of knowledge there is. Don't underestimate it. Spend a lot of time deciding what goes on the front cover, the spine, and the back cover of your book. Why does this matter? Who can tell me what two-letter word on a book's front cover almost always identifies it as an amateur or self-published production?
Bye.
Good, you know that. You're smart cookies. So, by may have been kind of the pattern in Victorian era, but as books began to minimize the number of text elements on the cover in order to see this as important real estate, then we kind of dropped the by. The publisher name does not typically even appear on the front cover. Where does it appear? It's the colophon appears on the spine, and publisher information appears on the back. I have seen books where authors who are so eager to use that name, that umbrella name that they set up for their own self-publishing operation. They want you to know it's a real publisher, so they put it on the front of the book. So don't try to avoid things like that. What your book's back cover, however, tells your customers is where you're going to spend a lot of time. And that entire first section of your questionnaire, somebody who has the questionnaire, just kind of run down the list for me. Read those elements that are in number 1. Okay? Somebody with a loud voice, just read out a few.
Book description and tagline.
Keep going.
Book control numbers. Library control numbers. BISAC codes. Keywords, author bio long, author bio short, author question and answer, book club discussion questions, reading guide, author website, author email address, author headshot, book cover and promo sizes, mega data submitted to books in print, to online bookstores, to bookstore chains, and Amazon author pages.
All right, that was a long list. What do those things have in common before you can start your back cover? You have to do them all first before you get to this stage. There are some important decisions to be made here. The book description is one of your most critical. And this is something that may evolve from your manuscript elevator pitch, but it is not going to be the same. The text that you write for your elevator pitch, which I know you have polished and you are ready to recite to an agent at the drop of a hat, that is not the language. It's not one size fits all. That's not the language that's going to go on your back cover. There are some norms of how this description is written, with verbs in what we call the narrative present tense, with characters who are given generalizations for most characters instead of exact character names, and with a summary that mirrors the arc of your story but doesn't give away too much. Writing book descriptions is an art. Don't underestimate it. And if you can get a professional to work with you, or an author who has worked with a publishing company's marketing department before to work with you on this, this is going to become the kernel that all of your other marketing text is going to evolve from. You'll have a long marketing description, and you should have a short one as well. You might shorten that further into a tagline, a one-phrase summary of your book that is small enough to go in an ad or a promotion. So book description is very important. Some other elements that go on your back cover. Praise and blurbs. Who knows the history of the blurb? Where did we get that? That ubiquitous thing that has such a funny name. These days, blurb has come to mean just any short bit of text, any short bit of a group of words. It was actually the coined term in the 1930s from an author named Gelett Burgess, who liked to make up funny words. He wrote the poem about the purple cow. And he called that thing where authors endorse the work of other authors a blurb, and it stuck. But these days, it's one of your most powerful marketing tools, and you begin soliciting those from people you may think would say something kindly about your book many months in advance. unless you have really good friends whose endorsements you'll want to put on the back of the book, and you can just call them up and say, hey, my book's coming out next week, I need to design the cover. So, and also if you have previous books, snippets of praise from previous reviews are gold. So when you get positive snippets, use those everywhere you can. Your author bio and photo, make these short, keep them pithy. Don't use your selfie that you took last week, however much you think that hides your double chins. Get a professional author headshot, or at least get a semi-pro photographer to set it up in flattering light for you. I will confess that these were not professional photos, but Kay and I worked an entire afternoon on dressing, styling, setting up, lighting, and posing for the 35 millimeter camera on the tripod to get those. So do your best photos because they're going to become an important part of your marketing toolkit. Your publisher info will go there on the back. And then the barcode with ISBN. The ISBN makes sure that your book is discoverable in databases. The barcode makes sure that it can be sold in bookstores. Any questions about any of this stuff we've been talking about that adds up to equal metadata? That's the word for all this book description stuff. Ryan has a question.
Should you also include on the back the genre so they know where to put it?
That's a good question, and there are very, there are mixed opinions about that. I always believed it was a good idea. So, but our publisher for the Paragraph Ranch did not do that. They felt that it would be obvious by the book description that it was fiction, and they didn't want to prejudice readers who might categorize themselves. University press books, I always felt should carry the field of the book, not because the people who were going to be reading it, the scholars in the field, were not going to know what the book was about, but because the person shelving books at the Barnes & Noble might get it wrong. So go ahead and help them out and give them the category where it's going to go. I know we're pushing our first 45 minutes here, so I'm going to go quickly through this. Metadata is what allows the computer to see your book. Book description allows human readers to understand about your book, but the big data that is exchanged from the machines at Publishers Weekly, at the Book Industry Study Group, at Books in Print, Balfour's Books in Print, which is the large catalog of all books, almost all books, and bookstores. They exchange in standard fields of metadata. Most big publishers are pretty expert at knowing how to crunch and manage this data and how to format it correctly in a standard for the industry. Many small publishers do not know how to do this fully. They use a smaller data set and they can usually get by. If you are acting as your own publisher, what's the likelihood that you're going to find your way correctly through the minefield of Onyx metadata? You're going to have to learn a little bit. Read up on all that small print in the Ingram Spark and the CreateSpace help fields as you are preparing to self-publish your book. And if you're working with an indie publisher, don't be afraid to talk with them about it. Ask them what help they need from you to make sure they have all the information that will allow them to put the fullest metadata out. Metadata exchange goes into sales tracking, and it is also gathered from bookstores. That's where your Amazon sales rankings and your Barnes & Noble book profile come from. How well your book is likely to sell. If some of you are running up against brick walls when you try to get your book in your local Barnes & Noble, or you're trying to get your book picked up by, say, Baker & Taylor for the library market, it is often because it does not look like it's going to have full enough metadata for it to be easily orderable. That's the rub. We're going to talk more about distribution at the very end. That's our number one problem as small publishers and as self-published authors. So metadata is that important. We're going to come back around to figuring out how to identify what successful books yours is like. Now, I just wish I could write a book that would be marketed on the shelves alongside Linda Brody's books. I could just only wish that my books would be shelved right next to Jody Thomas's. But in the end, it is the descriptor codes that our publisher assigned. Now, BISAC, Book Industry Study, I've forgotten what the code, the BISAC code stands for. It's an industry standard that turns language descriptors into number code descriptors. And as you know, if you've picked these from the lists that, say, CreateSpace makes available for you, it's hard. It's hard to decide where your book goes. You might say, gosh, my book's got elements of paranormal romance, but it has a little bit of sci-fi in it over here, and I might put it like in dark humor or something like that. What about the age that my book is appropriate for? Who knows where the boundaries come between middle grades and YA and tween and teen these days? Who can even figure that out besides our big publishers who crunch big data? One of the easiest ways that I find to do this, and I used to send my students out into the bookstores to do this, pick up that book that looks like yours, and open the book to its page right here, and make a note of those categories. Make a note of everything you can get from that. Then go to its Amazon listing and find its descriptors on Amazon. Go to IndieBound or Books in Print and find its BISAC descriptors. And since some of these are proprietary, Amazon has its own list of descriptors, do the best you can to match them up with BISAC codes and make your top 3 count for most. Top 3 BISAC codes, because every data stream will use at least 3. Some use more, but you gotta have 3, don't just pick one. So any questions about all of this, kind of geeky stuff?
What was the third one you said? Amazon and then what?
AmazonBN.com, our Books in Print, IndieBound for independent bookstores. So go into the bookstore, walk into the bookstore and look and see where Barnes & Noble shelved your book. Look and see, what major category it fits in and what it's next to on the shelf. Go to a library and look and see what Dewey Decimal or LC category your book has been classified into bibliographically. Those books that are like yours will help shed light onto how you want to see yours positioned.
When you look at your own book on Amazon, they always pop up, people also look at these books. There's a comparable books.
If you're lucky, yours gets served up there, yes.
Yeah, well, I guess Amazon does what you're just saying. Amazon pulls up the metadata and puts, these books also are similar books you might want to buy.
That's right, use that.
Can you look at those books as comparable and get information from them to help on your stuff?
You often can. That's a great place to start, Rick, but you will start to see that sometimes Amazon's algorithm is serving you up books that they want to sell and not just books that you think are most like yours. But it's a great place to start. All right, real quickly, book industry standards and communications. There we go. 52 major sections. It's a lot to memorize. Needless to say, the 800-pound gorilla of metadata is Amazon.com. 65% of all online new book units, print and digital, and those statistics are about 3 years old. So we tend to follow, as you said, Rick, Amazon's metadata practices. Just know that they are proprietary and not by any means universal, but you don't have access most of the time to play in the universal game. So use Amazon. All right, I want to end this section this morning. Maybe we'll only get through the M, and then we'll go to the APPS in the second part. But I'd like to wrap up the first section by having you do a little exercise. So somewhere on one of your sheets or on a sheet of paper, I'd like for you to see, to take a stab at crafting, not your manuscript's pitch, but your book's pitch. Imagine that your book is finished and you're packaging it ready to do your marketing plan, and you want to communicate to anyone who's helping you with your marketing at your publishing house, or your colleagues who are helping you, what is the book about? What is the book about in the context of its market? So I'll read this to you. This was our little Literary Texas guidebook. A handy-sized guide to the Lone Star State's top cities and towns for book lovers and literary pilgrims who enjoy a dose of culture with their travels. Based on Lone Star Literary Life's annual top 10 bookish destination rankings, Literary Texas also includes info about favorite bookstores, spotlighting sites from the Gulf of Mexico to the Red River. This was our pitch to booksellers. This is not our pitch to agents or editors. This is our book's pitch to why it should be on the shelves at Barnes & Noble, why our indie bookstore should carry it, why the Capitol gift shop in Austin should carry it. And they do. They listen to us. You can buy this book at the Capitol bookshop. Okay, so can we take 5 minutes and do that as you're doing your break? And what time, Rick, should we come back from the break?
Well, we usually take 10 to 15 minutes, so when you're ready.
So 5 after 11?
Yeah, we'll get started back.
Yeah, so do your refreshments, your restroom, and your